There we go. We've now moved over to a little after show. Hello, Tom.
Hey, hello, Joseph. How are you today? It's a great, great show. AC, thank you so much for all the ideas today.
Oh, you're welcome. Nice to meet you, Tom.
Nice to meet you too. This is the first show I've ever signed a pledge. I took a pledge, I signed a petition. I did it all while you guys were talking. What great stuff. I bet a lot of other viewers did too.
Oh, thank you, Tom. Those petitions matter. It lets legislators and others know that a lot of people care, right?
It's so good. You brought up so many good ideas today. I mean, too many people think that the purpose of business is just to provide a product or provide a service, but it's really to have an impact in the world for good. I've been thinking recently about business as an engine for human good, and everything you said today about how can I help, how can I be of service. I've written a couple of books about success. I've written a lot of books, but a couple of them about how we think of success. And because of people like you, I'm thinking through success as service. Maybe we need to redefine success. It's not about standing above other people. It's about serving other people well. And what you said today was just so eloquent along those lines. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I like your framing of success as service. Completely agree with that. And the other lens we didn't talk about today as I think about that service is in the company to the employees.
Oh, yeah.
And that has been really critical in these COVID times.
Yeah.
Because people, are in need.
Yeah, they are. That's right.
in so many ways, and how we help people through their needs and then help them make the difference that they want to have.
Yeah.
Like it's another way of being of service.
Absolutely. And if all we think about is profits, we make a lot of bad decisions that ultimately are not good for profits. It's the people who come first. I've been sort of trying to stress that to folks for 30 years now as a philosopher. And it's good to see so many people waking up to ideas like purpose and meaning and value and commitment as being not peripheral to business, but really at the heart of what a business is or should be.
I just had this like mini epiphany brought about based on what AC said and what you said, Tom, which is, and just stay with me for just a brief moment, but it's almost like Unilever is, and I'll explain afterwards. I'll back my way out of it. Unilever almost is a company that has taken an uncustomer-centric position. And what I mean by that is it's a company so deeply committed to its employees, to the environment, to communities, of which, of course, their customers are part of, that they don't have to overextend or over-deliver in what is called service or experience, because they make great products. The products do their job. And sometimes, we've always struggled. I mean, I know in the early days of social media, I always would say in one of my presentations, I would say, nobody wants to talk to a shoe or talk to a can of soda. And yet that can of soda keeps trying to friend me on Facebook. So it's almost like this idea of, I need to wash my hair. I need to wash my clothes. I need an ice cream, after I've had a bad day. But now I have more reasons to turn to this company because the company has transcended this transactional exchange. I pay money, I get goods, I consume goods, and so that's what I meant by saying it's almost like it's almost like a kind of a contradictory way of thinking about customer centric, which is, of course, the company is customer centric, but it needs to be human centric first. It needs to take care of all humans.
That's what I was going to say. I think it's a reframe on what customer centric is, and it's. I was going to say, I love your language on human centric, because it's like it's the whole. See, we often think about a person as a consumer. And that's where we break down, because there's someone that's consuming our product. And so your reframe of human we're people in our lives. And so if we're really committed to being of service, we think about how we service them wholly. And so part of that is serving the community, it's serving the planet, and of course, it's also serving our functional and emotional desires through product. But that is what that's one part of it. So I like your framing a lot, because that's, and again, what's been helpful in this conversation, it creates some reframing of and ways to talk about things that we try to do. So I like that human centric.
And AC, I'll say one thing, and then I'll turn it over to our a man who gets very inspired, which is Mr. Jan Zlotnick, because I know he has something to say. But you know, I have to tell you that that I think very, you know, first of all, it's just been so terrific to have you on the show, and I want you to know, I say this to all our guests, which is, this is a small, you know, growing community, especially this after show. You are welcome anytime you want to join. Normally the show is at 2, to pop in, to Zoom bomb us, you know, to just hang out, to you know, to kind of bounce off us, you know, because we feel this very strong connection, and we almost feel like every day we're just it's almost like a different chapter of a book. And we're writing a bigger book, and every single connection adds to that body of work. But the other thing I wanted to say, and then I'm going to turn over to the rest of you guys, is I said this at the beginning. There are so many companies doing so many good things, but nobody knows about it. Yeah. And it's almost like, you know, it's not about bragging. It's not about arrogance. The world needs to know about these initiatives. There's no way that you can brag or be arrogant about, you know, some of the things you're doing. There's no self-serving aspect to it. It's selfless. Yeah, it's selfless, and it's quite transparent too. And I just think, you know, like, I hope even you being on the show today will, you know, even just touching one life, someone who signs the pledge, but then who tells other people about it. This is the kind of, as they called it, idea virus, the good kind of virus that the world needs.
It is.
So Jan, take it away. I'm going to shut up now.
Well, no, it's all good. And Essie, thank you. And I think a lot of brands are trying to be human-centric, and it's not working all the time, or often, I would say. And the way that you have expressed it, your company has expressed it, the brand has expressed it in 2 ways for me, and that is courage. There's a difference between saying that we're going to be people-centric because you get a sense that everybody wants that, you know? It's like, oh, we have to stop being about the establishment and you know, the authority, and be with the people. And that is true. But it's often poisoned. The well is poisoned because people do it with not really good intentions, and they don't pull it off well. And that's good. I like it when companies who aren't authentic can't pull it off well, because it gives me a sense that the companies that do, like Dove, have that courage to do it, and do it with intent, do it culturally, not just through marketing. And then it gets executed in the same quality level. And that execution was so amazing. I'm a creative director and writer, that I have to ask you, how was that filmed during a pandemic? Those people, unless it was photoshopped, had scars on their faces from the mask that they took off.
Yeah, we talked to real people. I mean, we went into hospitals, and some people, we had a hard time even getting the releases because they were working. It wasn't filmed. You know, these are photographs. You see the style because it was during the film. So it wasn't like we went around with a video team. So photographs, we had a photographer that actually went in and took pictures.
Wow.
We had a range of pictures. And then again, we had to, so it was in real time.
Yeah, that had to be April at the earliest. Could have been May, but it was in the heat of it all. Mm-hmm. And I remember being in the living room with my wife, and we were we were stunned. We couldn't move, and we couldn't breathe for a moment. And then we said, wow, that was like nothing else. And there is some hope there. And for me, from a branding aspect, when I talked to my teams about this, it was, that's the gold standard. And I didn't mean that from a marketing standpoint. I meant we want to work with clients like that, period.
Yeah.
And yeah. So
And we did that very quickly.
Wow.
We were talking earlier about employees. This mindset of help just opened up so much because our teams came together. Dove is Unilever's biggest brand. And so in that, we've got a global team, we have a local team, we have lots of teams. But when you think, how can I help? The teams come together and become one team.
Yeah.
And it was in less than 2 weeks, if that.
Wow.
It was, how can we help? We've seen these incredible pictures. I think it was someone on the team who had pictures, and we just went out and got more pictures. But what we asked ourselves, we actually, inspired by the courage before we had the program of what we were going to do.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't want to just create a film. We wanted to help. So we had to work with Direct Relief to say, where do you need funding? Where do you need help? We looked at how we could literally get the PPE in the hands of hospitals. So that made it take even longer. Even we went really fast, but getting the program right. So it wasn't just, let's show faces of people on the front lines. How can we help these people who are sacrificing? Literally sacrificing their lives, especially at that state in the pandemic. There wasn't a lot known about the virus, not as much as we know now.
Yeah.
So we didn't, so they were really, and many of them, some of them wouldn't go home at night. They'd stay in, they would stay in local hotels because they didn't know what they were bringing home to their families. So anyway, I appreciate what you're saying. And I think, again, this mindset of service opens up so much. Your organizations can act. I've learned the Unilever organization to act even faster than I knew them to because of the commitment that people had. And it was in our broad ecosystem, not just employees, but our agency partners.
Hey, Essie, I think that's such a landmark piece of work. Really, more, like I said, more than marketing, it's a touchstone for our times. And I would be interested to see the sequel to that.
Yeah, it's very powerful. The fact
I'd like to find out what happened to those people.
Yeah.
I'd like to see those people again.
Yeah,
That's a
great idea. And that just shows, I mean, and sadly, some of them may not be alive. But I feel like that message needs. Wow, that's a powerful idea. Jay.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I mean, as someone who wrote Life After the 30-Second Spot, right? And AC and I were talking about it before. I'm even rethinking the power of video and the power of a message, and I'll tell you exactly why. Because first of all, that courage commercial. First of all, it's not a commercial. Let's not call it a commercial. It's a touchstone, as you say. But first of all, it's the product of years, over a decade of work with Campaign for Real Beauty. That's the first thing. So when you said I'd like to see the sequel, the fact is that is the sequel to what came before, and something will come after. So the first point I think is all this is, it's a tiny little portal. It's a tiny little window into something so much bigger. Number one, this ongoing, decade young commitment to real beauty, and courage, right? Number two is the fact that there was the substance of PPE equipment being donated, that there was so much more than just a message. There was actual action and execution and fulfillment. And then the third part, which I think is so powerful, is the context of just remember where we were at the time And as you say, people that didn't even go back to their families in order to bring you this message. I don't think we've ever seen many pieces of executions in our lives that have as much, gravitas, foundation, substance and power as just this little spot did.
That's a key, I think. And AC said it was done quickly. And I remember the Gettysburg Address was written quickly. As sometimes things of great power are almost spontaneous. And that's the thing that struck me about that spot, that video, is just the sheer power of it. And it plugs into something so deep. There was a man who was your age, Joseph, and he was your age, AC, and he was very successful like you two guys. And he said to himself, wait a minute, when I was young, all I wanted to do was get as rich as possible. Now I have so much money, I'll never spend it all. And then all I wanted to do was get as famous as possible. I'm as famous as Shakespeare. And what's the point? Leo Tolstoy said, what is the meaning of my life and why am I doing any of the stuff I'm doing? What's the point of it all? And he said for 2 years, he couldn't answer the question. It drove him crazy. He almost became suicidal because for 2 years, he couldn't answer the question, why am I doing any of the stuff I'm doing? What's the meaning of life? What's the meaning of my work? And at the end of 2 years, he tells us in this tiny little book, amazing that Tolstoy could write a tiny little book. He says, what then should man do? Man should live his life in service to others. That was his discovery after 2 years of what life is all about. It's all about living in service to others. So the portraits you portrayed in that video were the faces of people living their lives and sacrificing, being willing to risk their lives in service to others. That deep lesson that Tolstoy learned and that we all resonate with. And that's where you see power in video, when something is portrayed that we resonate from the heart. So yeah, thank you for being involved with that, and for Joseph for showing us that. I mean, geez, as a philosopher, I love to see something like that.
I need to see your notes today. My
notes. I got really excited today. Look at all the stars on my notes. Look at all the yellow. Look at all the red. I try to write down everything important, and I thought I was going to end up writing a book. AC just kept saying things important. Joseph, you kept saying important things. I was in the chat log writing like a maniac. So you guys, I always say you guys get the neurons going on this show. But AC did a spectacular job.
So I have to tell you, Tom, I repeat it almost every day, but it's worth repeating. Tom was a guest on the show, and he came as a keynote speaker through a speakers bureau. And I said to him what I said to you. I said, hey, come back, feel free to drop in and join the after show, periodically. I'm quite self-deprecating. So I'd say, don't do it for me. Just look at the guest. And if the guest is impressive, drop by. And now he's become part of this after show community. And this is why I love the after show. It's just the conversations just blow me away.
And now I'm chewing gum on the bottom of his shoe. He can't get rid of me.
I think what AC said is very important. I hope it's said at the conferences, and that is that it's a time in which it's easy to feel exhausted. I remember, Joseph, you asked AC if she was exhausted with all this, and AC said it's quite the opposite. And
energized.
That makes so much sense, because when you do work like this, when you do courageous work like this, when you do things that that you must and that don't take a lot of time because it's already in you and you need to get it out, it's fulfilling. The more that you give, it seems the more that you're filled, and that's a beautiful philosophy of its own that Dove has and that Unilever has. Unilever, I was thinking, is more like a river. You're saying it's not a sequel, it's a uniriver. It's just a flow of truth.
I said Unileader. I like my uni.
Yeah.
I mean, we get paid by the pun. Don't worry.
Yeah, right.
You got a lot of them. You should be paid a lot. This is so great. I see why this community is addictive. It's great to engage with you guys. So many good ideas.
It's funny because the show was born in a pandemic, and it was quite funny because when we had the tropical storm that came through, I'm in Connecticut, and we all lost power. And it was the first time that I actually didn't broadcast or share on, stream, I should say, on a series of days. And someone wrote this brilliant line. They said, a show that was born out of a pandemic and almost died in a tropical storm. But I'll tell you, like, when you've done 120 of these, and this is the power, right? We talk about breaking through the clutter. I say this a lot now, but I just want to repeat it all the time to my guests, because it's such a powerful thought. When everyone talks the same and when everyone is the same, it all just becomes vanilla. But when somebody says something that you've never heard before, it just hits you like a 10-ton truck. When these things like success as a service, and this idea of earning growth, and we created a business out of health. These are all original thoughts and compelling thoughts. And even this idea of Unilever not being a customer-centric brand, but obviously, company, but like explaining what that means. It's just amazing stuff. To get all of this thinking, I think I'm going to have to take I don't want to say the wrong brand. Does Unilever have a product for headaches or? I want to say the wrong one.
Not yet.
No, but my head hurts in the best possible way.
Unilever is a Unileader. My first exposure to Unilever was 20 years ago. AC, I was a philosophy professor at Notre Dame, and companies just started asking me to come and talk about philosophy. And I never really thought that was something I would ever be doing. But I got a call from the CEO's office at Unilever one day, and they said, hey, we need you to come to Canada. We're having an executive retreat with our top people. And that was a week that I was in too many other places. I said, well, it was in a remote location. I said, it would take 6 airplanes and 15 hours for me to get there and back, 15 hours each way. I just can't fit it into the week unless you guys send an airplane for me. And they said, okay, we'll send a plane. I said, okay, this is a company that cares about wisdom then. The only company I know of that you just ask, send a plane, and for a philosopher, come on, people would send a plane to get rid of me, but not to bring me to their location. So I had the most amazing day. I took my son with me, and we remember vividly to this day, 20 years later, the conversations of real wisdom and virtue that day with people in Unilever, and hearing about your past, your history, your values, projecting into the future. And again, that was 20 years ago. So to see somebody like you involved now and doing these powerful things about racial justice and the other things you're involved in, I'm just, hats off to you. It's wonderful to know we have companies like that in this country doing such things.
Hey, AC, I have another practical question, if you don't mind. And that is, how have the other brands been affected by, I think of Dove's work, front and center for being the courage brand, but I'm sure there are others, but that what comes to mind. Have the other brands been impacted by this courageous stand that Dove took so many years ago?
It's interesting. When Dove first started the campaign for Real Beauty, I was not working at Unilever. And it's interesting to think about what the industry's perspective is on it, because what's changed, and I'm hoping will continue to change. When the campaign for Real Beauty came out, companies are more obsessed with business growth, and the belief was it's a campaign that's in people's hearts but doesn't actually drive business, and that is what I believe the industry believed. Now working for Unilever, I know that is absolutely not true. Dove is our fastest growing brand. So back to this idea of earning your growth. My experience is the more you do, the more engaged your consumers are, and the more you're able to do because you're rewarded with growth. And as the demographics change even more, let's say Gen Z, they really use their purchasing power behind brands that make an impact. My 14-year-old polices my purchases, right? Based on what they do. So your question was, what kinds of changes have we seen? I think in the early days, less impact of other businesses and brands. In these days, much more so. You know, people talk about purpose all the time, right? And I think what people are more apt to mimic is what I call the say, which is the purpose adder communication. What people are less apt to mimic, like most kind of business models, is the whole system of the do, what you do. And then you say what you do, as someone pointed out, to drive participation so that your do becomes more impactful. I've still not seen that enacted, and I champion brands to do that. So when I speak to the industry, I don't feel like this is like proprietary to Unilever. My call to action is, brands, let's do more in total, right? It's a good thing. The more brands do, it's good for all of us. And then let's make more people aware. Just like, I think it was you, Tom, or was it you? Well, maybe it was you, Jan, saying there's not a let's not be ashamed to talk about what we're doing. I say, absolutely. But why? It's not to say, guess what we're doing? It's more to say, help us do this, join us, so that we can do more.
Well,
and that replicated.
And that's and the thing is that it's subtle, but it's significant. Every one of these initiatives that you shared today has a call to action, has a petition. It's not insignificant. That's what, because there are two things that come out of it. One is help us. We can't do this alone. So it's not like, oh, we did this, look how great we are, here's the reel. It's this is the first step. You know, the first step is the hardest step, but we've taken it. Now we invite you to join us. And I think just that petition in of itself says, you know, as we've gone through and we've seen from, you know, the Women's March to Black Lives Matter, which is this a moment or a movement? And I think we've seen the power of a movement. And now we're seeing brands being able to join in and lead and establish their own movements that can move the world.
You know, and you see it like Levi's. I was hearing an interview the other day. One of my friends, Alan Murray, was interviewing Chip Berg, CEO of Levi's. They're taking a stand on gun safety. And then, you know, all of a sudden Walmart and Dick's Sporting Goods and other companies, it starts to spread. And really looking back at other times of social turmoil and the discovery of social problems, like in the 60s and the 70s, I don't remember businesses getting on board and taking a stand and trying to make a broad difference for good in the world like they're doing now. In that sense, we live in a very exciting time. I mean, we can focus on the fact of all the stuff that's going wrong with the pandemic, all the uncertainty, all the confusion around it, but it is an exciting time because there seems to be a revitalization, almost a reinvention of our vision for business going on now. That's very exciting.
It doesn't hurt that a large group of the population are young and diverse, and have the money to affect those brands to act.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, I'm going to just distill it down as we come up to 30 minutes and honoring our 30-minute deadline. It's clear that people born in the year 1970 are changing the world. So I just want to, you know, now that I've met my twin, AC, I just want to, you know, thank you. You are so welcome here anytime. This has been just an inspirational 90 minutes, which could go on forever and hopefully will.
Thank you, Bracey.
Incredible. This has been a gift to me. So thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for your wisdom. You know, you see me looking down, that was my notebook. I have tons of notes, as you do, Tom. So thank you for the gift. And I would love to join for this enriching conversation anytime.
Well, wonderful. And look, we will be in the virtual audience, some of us cheering you on.
Thank you.
And look, even Steve Garfield's just going to say hi quickly.
This was great. I loved it. My mom called. I was making dinner, and I'm going to watch the whole thing, but it's really good. And I shared Tom, you shared the petition. I shared it on Twitter, Facebook. I'm into that.
Fabulous.
Me too.
So-
Me too. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm-
Good.
Thank you.
Trying to help.
Let's cause some good trouble. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Amen. And Jan and Tom, I'll see you on the community show tomorrow.
Oh yeah. We got to think of something to say.
All right. Well,
After
I
this,
mean,
we better be good.
For everyone.
all we got to do is just take from today the inspiration.